Batman is DC Comics' most beloved and famous superhero, but not everyone knows him as well as they think. There are a buttload of misconceptions surrounding the Dark Knight, but then there are also things that can be slightly confusing, stemming from the character's depiction, his look, or even the objects he keeps in the Batcave. Naturally, this has led to fans posing all sorts of questions regarding the character. Some are easier to answer, others not so much, but they are all answerable. So, I'm Ewan, this is What Culture Comics, and here are 10 Batman questions that always confused you. Number 10, why does Batman have a T-Rex and coin in the Batcave? For almost as long as there has been a Batcave, Batman has kept souvenirs of his exploits in it. The T-Rex and the penny in particular are the standout attractions, and they both, unsurprisingly, originate from some of Bruce Wayne's earliest adventures as the Dark Knight. The origin for how Batman acquired the robotic dino came in Batman Chronicles number 8, where it's revealed that Bruce took it from a theme park ran by an old friend of the Waynes. A business partner uses it for evil, and once a slightly melancholic Batman rains in his parade, dejected at the unending nature of his war against crime, Alfred suggests that he keeps trophies in the cave to remind him of his successes, so he does. Now for the penny. Given there's only one Batman villain who incorporates a coin into his gimmick, it's obvious that Two-Face has something to do with it, right? Only he didn't, because it's actually the penny plunderer responsible for this contraption, at least at first. The New 52 claim Bats got it in 0 years, so there you have it. Number 9, what's the point of the yellow symbol? Ignoring for a second that the yellow symbol is better than just the plain old black one, those who take umbrage with Batman's brighter insignia tend to claim that it's antithetical to the character's general aesthetic. The Dark Knight only uses black, or sometimes very, very dark grey. The yellow just shouldn't be there, except they're wrong. The aesthetic qualities are purely subjective, of course, but there's a practical reason for why Batman has that bright chest symbol, and it's to do with the armor of the Batsuit itself. The initial cause behind Bruce adopting the yellow symbol, as explained in the late Darwin Cook's impeccable DC The New Frontier, was down to him not wanting to scare children. It's a separate Earth, fair enough, but it serves as a fantastic explanation for why the Dark Knight became brighter in the transition from the Golden to the Silver Age. Practically speaking, the yellow symbol also has value. It effectively acts like a big shiny bullseye, drawing fire to the most heavily armored part of Batman's costume. So there you have it, the yellow symbol rocks, and there are actual reasons for why it's a necessary component of the Batsuit. Number 8, why doesn't Bruce Wayne fight crime in a different way? Batman isn't a perfect creation. Bruce Wayne is a billionaire who considers himself above the rules, and his predilection to beating the snot out of villains at the first opportunity, rather than preempt crime at the source, could be considered flawed, to say the least. Only, the perception of Batman as a selfish vigilante who only goes out and attacks criminals and just stops is actually incorrect. The problem is that it's not really communicated frequently enough in different media. Bruce Wayne's mantra is plain and simple. He suits up as Batman to ensure what happened to him at a young age shouldn't happen to anyone else. He engages in philanthropy and has even been known to volunteer to help Gotham's poor while in various disguises. Far be it from Bruce to have nothing but contempt for the inmates of Arkham Asylum, he's also overseen the rehabilitation of several of his adversaries personally, contributing vast sums of money to prevent crime rather than stopping it as a Bat-themed judge and jury. Number 7, what is and isn't considered continuity? Continuity is one of the biggest and most confusing aspects of comic book universes. For starters, there's decades of the stuff, and when you factor in reboots, retcons, and relaunches, it can prove to be quite a challenge to place when certain stories take place, or even what previous comics have played a part in the build-up. Starting with Crisis on Infinite Earths, the publisher has rebooted, retconned, or relaunched its line of comics more times than Batman's had sidekicks, but here's how things stand currently. First off, there are two principal continuities, pre- and post-Crisis. Pre-Crisis encompasses everything before 1985, while post-Crisis encompasses everything that followed. The reboot enabled writers to retell Batman's origins, with Year One and The Long Halloween depicting the Dark Knight's formative years, but this is where things get even weirder. The DCEU experienced several more crises in the years following Infinite Earth, but it wasn't until 2011 that DC wiped everything from the drawing board. It was meant to be a clean break, but they picked and chose what was and wasn't continuity. And then came DC Rebirth, which is a higgledy-piggledy mesh between the post-Crisis DCU and the New 52. Confusing? Absolutely. But continuity these days, at least for DC, tends to be more of a tonal thing than anything else. It's not necessarily even quantifiable anymore. Number 6, why was he okay with Jason Todd using guns? Moving swiftly onto stuff that is slightly less confusing, at least slightly, we now come to Red Hood. The title was first used by Joker supposedly in the accident that led to his permanent scarring at Ace Chemicals. Today, however, it is the second Robin, Jason Todd, who goes by the mantle. Wherever you side on the should Jason Todd have returned debate, one quandary that few writers have failed to really address has been how Jason's current association with the Bat family contradicts Batman's one rule. Todd is an anti-hero who uses firearms, and unless your only experience of Batman has come at the expense of 2016's Batman v Superman, you'll know that the Cape Crusader considers guns a big no-no. And yet, in recent years, Jason has been free to wear his symbol and regularly interacts with the Dark Knight and his allies. So what gives? The answer, sadly, isn't all that satisfying. It seems as though Bruce just tolerated his behavior on the condition that Jason didn't kill, but at no point does he decry his former ward from using firearms while brandishing the Bat symbol. It's only in the most recent volume of Red Hood and the Outlaws that the pair once again came to blows, with Batman kicking him out of the Bat family for good after Jason tried to assassinate the Penguin. Number 5, why is the Joker so different each time? Comic book characters are interpreted and reinterpreted in different ways all the time. It's partially why Batman is such a divisive character, as he's different things to different people. Naturally, this principle also applies to his villains, but none more so than the clown prince of crime himself, the Joker. If you hadn't noticed already, there are a lot of different versions of the Joker. In some incarnations, he's a clowning prankster, others a sadistic serial killer, and in some a figure who couldn't bear the thought of killing Batman. It's part and parcel of the character, but one that was explained by Grant Morrison back during his stint on Batman in the late noughties. During his series, Morrison opined that the Joker isn't insane, but rather super sane, able to reinvent his personality at the flick of a switch. It explained how the character kept on changing over the years and provided a canonical precedent for future writers to experiment with drastically different versions of the character. Now though, a different explanation has come around, courtesy of writer Jeff Johns. He gave the Dark Knight access to Metron's chair, a source of limitless knowledge, and revealed that there have been 3 Jokers all along. Johns promises to elaborate on this theory further later in the year with 3 Jokers, but for now, the reason for how Joker keeps surviving and changing is down to the fact there have been at least 3 of them operating at any given moment. Number 4, why did he pick Azrael as his replacement in Nightfall? The 90s were a tepid time for the comics industry, but one character who managed to weather the storm, mostly, was Batman. Nightfall's Azrael may have boasted all the hallmarks of a road 90s design, but he ended the decade as an integral and beloved Batman character, thanks largely to the event where he became Batman. Bruce Wayne overstretches himself trying to quell a breakout from Arkham Asylum, pushes away his allies, and has his back broken in 2 by Bane. Bruce, now recovering, decides that Gotham still needs a Batman and instructs Jean-Paul Valley to take up the mantle while he recovers. Valley proceeds to be an even more radical Dark Knight than Bruce could have ever imagined, outfitting himself in a new outfit and brutalizing criminals left and right. It forces Bruce to return to Gotham to fight for the right to be Batman all over again, which he does. But why Valley? The answer is somewhat tragic. Bruce knew that Dick was desperate to escape his shadow and assumed he'd balk at the prospect of being Batman, while Tim himself was just way too young. Valley, although a volatile option, was the only one he felt capable of shouldering the burden. Number 3, is Bruce Wayne just a mask? There's been a tendency in some depictions of the character to deem Bruce the mask and Batman the real man underneath. To make that judgment now, however, would be a fundamental mistake to make. Bruce Wayne and Batman are one and the same. You can't separate one without losing something. Just because he projects a fake image to the public doesn't mean he's consumed with nothing but Batman, as was illustrated perfectly in another Darwin Cook novel, Batman Ego. Bruce is a father, friend, and ally to many. He's also extremely compassionate, and while that element is sometimes lost when he suits up, it's never a case that one side of the character represents his quote-unquote real self. Number 2, for a man who works alone, why does he have so many allies? Batman has always been considered a bit of a loner. He doesn't play well with others, even on the Justice League, and bats away help at the first opportunity. Or so it would seem. Yes, the world's greatest detective may cut an isolated figure on and off the page, but it's sort of an open secret that he enjoys company. His book was one of the first to coin a family title in DC's comics, and in every decade since he's first appeared, he's had a Robin, a Butler, and a Batgirl by his side. Would an actual loner keep such company? No, they wouldn't, and that's why the perception of Batman as an angsty loner is more a nonsensical cliche than it is a genuine character trait. Batman needs a family. more than he himself perhaps realizes. And number 1, can he really beat everyone with enough prep time? If you've been on the internet for about the last decade, you'll no doubt be privy to the plethora of versus scenarios played out online that see Batman as an invulnerable master tactician. The idea that he can beat even the strongest figures with enough prep time is just a myth, one extrapolated from the character's exploits in Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns and Mark Waid's Justice League Tower of Babel. The former story, set in a dystopian alternate future, sees Bruce Wayne go toe-to-toe with Superman with the use of a mechanized suit. He's able to take on the Man of Steel thanks to the assistance of Green Arrow, who fires kryptonite right at Kal-El, enabling the Dark Knight to lay the smackdown temporarily. It's important to remember though that Bruce doesn't actually win this fight outright. Not that the purpose was to even defeat Superman in the first place. Tower of Babel saw the Cape Crusader strategies against the Justice League exploited by Ra's al Ghul, but his allies weren't permanently defeated, but instead briefly incapacitated. Everyone can pretty much agree that Batman's appeal lies in his vulnerability. He's just a man, which is why it's so confusing that fans are so eager to anoint the character DC's most invincible hero.